A baby's cry pierced through the crowded cabin of the late-night flight, cutting through the chatter, the rustling of snack wrappers, and the hum of the engines. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging impatient glances as the cries grew louder, sharper, and more relentless. The source was a tiny baby cradled in the arms of a young woman dressed in a tailored suit, her hair perfectly styled, yet her trembling hands betrayed her panic. She was no ordinary passenger, she was a CEO, known for commanding boardrooms and making billion-dollar decisions. But in that moment, on that flight, none of her power or confidence could stop her child from crying. And what happened next would leave the entire crew, and every passenger on board, speechless. She tried everything, rocking, bouncing, whispering soothing words, but the baby only cried harder. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she caught the annoyed stares of fellow travelers. A few muttered complaints floated in the air. Why can't she control her baby? Some of us need to sleep. The CEO's eyes filled with tears. She had faced ruthless competitors, aggressive investors, and the pressure of leading a global company, yet nothing had prepared her for this helplessness. She wasn't just tired, she was alone. Her husband had walked out months ago when the weight of parenthood clashed with his own ambitions, leaving her to balance an empire and motherhood at once. She hadn't even wanted to take this flight, but a crucial deal awaited her on the other side. And now, she felt she was failing in the most human way possible. Unable to comb her own child. Across the aisle sat a man in his early 30s, worn jeans and a simple shirt. He had the kind of presence most people overlooked, quiet, unassuming. But his eyes, sharp and observant, had been following the CEO's struggle. He wasn't irritated like the others. He wasn't rolling his eyes or pulling his pillow over his head. Instead, he seemed concerned. His gaze lingered on the baby, then on her trembling hands. After a long pause, he unbuckled his seatbelt. The flight attendant rushed over. "Sir, please remain seated." But he gave her a calm nod and whispered, "Trust me, I can help." He walked over to the CEO's seat, crouching down slightly so as not to tower over her. She stiffened, clutching her baby tighter, afraid of judgment. But his voice was steady, gentle. "May I?" he asked softly, extending his arms. The CEO blinked, confused. "What?" "I'm a single dad," he explained, a faint smile touching his lips. "I know that cry. That's not just fussing, your baby's exhausted. I can help calm her down." The woman hesitated. She didn't know this man, didn't know him trust. Yet something in his eyes, kind, unwavering, made her believe him. With trembling hands, she placed her baby into his arms, and then, something remarkable happened. The baby, who had been screaming for what felt like forever, let out one last wail before quieting. The man held the infant close to his chest, swaying gently as if he had done it 1,000 times before. Within minutes, the cries softened into tiny hiccups, then faded into steady breathing. The baby was asleep. The cabin fell silent. Every passenger who had been irritated now watched in awe. The crew exchanged looks of disbelief. The CEO pressed a hand to her lips, her eyes welling with tears, not just from relief, but from a deep ache she had carried alone. When the man handed her baby back, she whispered, "How did you do that?" He shrugged softly, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken struggles. "When you've raised a baby on your own, you learn. Nights like these, you get used to them." Her heart twisted. For the first time in months, someone understood. The rest of the flight passed with an unexpected peace. The baby slept soundly, the CEO leaned back with tear-streaked cheeks, and the passengers, once restless, now whispered about the mysterious man who had silenced a storm with nothing but patience and love. But what she didn't know was that this stranger's story was far heavier than she imagined, and before the flight landed, his truth would leave her shaken to the core. When the plane touched down hours later, the CEO couldn't shake the stranger from her thoughts. She wanted to thank him properly, maybe even know his name. But before she could gather the courage, the crew announced that one of the passengers, the same man, needed assistance exiting the flight. Confusion rippled across the cabin. She rose from her seat and hurried toward the aisle, baby in her arms, just as the man stood with a small duffel bag slung over his shoulder. A faint limp slowed his steps. The CEO's breath caught. She hadn't noticed before, but his movements were stiff, weary, as if life had taken more from him than he let on. Outside the gate, she finally approached him. "Wait, please. At least tell me your name." He turned, the corners of his mouth lifting in a tired but genuine smile. Daniel. She studied him, torn between curiosity and gratitude. Why did you help me? You didn't have to. His eyes softened. Because I know what it's like to be judged. To feel like you're failing when you're just trying to hold it all together. My little girl, she's 6 now. I raised her alone since the day she was born. People looked at me like I couldn't do it. But I did. And when I saw you tonight, I knew you didn't need criticism. You needed someone to remind you you're not alone. The CEO's throat tightened. For years, she had prided herself on being unbreakable, untouchable. Yet here was a man who had faced struggles she couldn't imagine, speaking to her not with pity, but with quiet strength. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once, almost as if to say the conversation was enough. Then he turned to leave. But just before disappearing into the crowd, Daniel glanced back, his voice carrying across the noise of the airport. One more thing, don't ever believe that asking for help makes you weak. Sometimes, it's the bravest thing you can do. The CEO stood frozen, her baby warm against her chest, as his words sank in. She realized then that the greatest lesson hadn't come from boardrooms or business empires. It had come from a stranger on a midnight flight, a single dad whose quiet act of kindness had silenced not just her baby's cries, but the storm inside her heart that night changed her forever. She walked away from that gate not just as a CEO, but as a mother who understood that strength wasn't about doing it all alone, it was about letting love, even from strangers, remind us we are human. And sometimes, humanity is the most powerful thing of all.